Welcome to There's Sometimes a Buggy, Irresponsible Opinions about Classic Film. I'm Elise.
I'm Dave, and this week it's the Hollywood Studios Year by Year, MGM 1932. We'll be discussing Blondie of the Follies and Faithless. After that, stay tuned for Fear and Moviegoing in Toronto. We saw our last TIFF Lightbox film of the summer, Leaving Las Vegas from 1995. You won't want to miss that. As usual, with our Hollywood Studios Year by Year episodes, we like to consult a whole bunch of coffee table books of my youth. Let's kick things off with Joel W. Findler. He gives us his handy chart of personalities under contract to each studio in a given year. He gives his people 1, 2, or 3 stars, depending on how valuable he thinks they are to the studio for the length of their contract. Occasionally he gives them 0 stars if he just wants to throw them on there for fun. MGM, of course, star-studded, so we've got a whole list of names in 1932. Wallace Beery, 2 stars. Clark Gable, 3 stars. Robert Young, 2 stars. Johnny Weissmuller, 1 star. Jean Harlow, 3 stars. Myrna Loy, 2 stars. Buster Keaton, rounding out his time at MGM with 1 star.
Ouch.
Ramon Navarro, 2 stars. Marion Davies, 1 star, which we've quibbled with before, and probably will again this episode. John Gilbert, 2 stars. Norma Shearer, 3 stars. Joan Crawford, 3 stars. Greta Garbo, 3 stars. Marie Dressler, 2 stars. And Robert Montgomery, 2 stars. Another piece of information Findler conveys to us every time out. Oscars awarded to the studio in a given year. For the Oscar year 1931-32, MGM won 5 Oscars. Grand Hotel won the big prize, Best Picture. Sin of Madeleine Claudet won for Best Actress. I guess that was Helen Hayes. The Champ won for Best Actor, Wallace Beery, and also for Best Screenplay. And The Music Box won for Best Short. I don't know what that is.
I doubt we'll live long enough to get around to the shorts.
I do have an interest in shorts from this period. I've seen very few apart from the Benchleys.
Maybe if we indeed make it into our 90s coherently.
Another thing we've been checking out every time for Hollywood Studios Year by Year is John Springer's Forgotten Films to Remember. The way he lays things out, he lists a few movies from the year that he believes have not been forgotten as of 1980 in his circle of friends, perhaps. And then he gives a whole bunch of movies that he thinks we ought to remember. So for 1932, the MGM movies that he believes people, they just know them. Grand Hotel, hard to argue with that. People at least know that name, even if they haven't seen the movie. The Norma Shearer, Frederick March, Smilin' Through, and 2 from Jean Harlow, Red Dust and Red-Headed Woman.
Well, I certainly agree with those.
Yeah, so those were remembered. Out of the ones that were not remembered, according to Springer, he's got a little paragraph here, which includes 2 movies. Nobody could play cat and mouse better than John and Lionel Barrymore at the top of their form in Arsène Lupin. The old detective story still had some surprises. It was a much more felicitous outing for the brothers than was Rasputin and the Empress of the same year, which had John just walking through while Lionel masticated the scenery. Jack Conway directed. He does not want you to remember Rasputin and the Empress.
He's probably right.
Yeah.
Well, there were some memorable scenes in it, though.
We'll always remember it, I guess. But
the spider?
yeah. Did we need to see it? I don't know. But we talked about it on the podcast. Lovers Courageous was a thin little romance, but it had great charm, particularly in the performances of its title players, Robert Montgomery and Madge Evans, with a top supporting cast, Roland Young, Reginald Owen, Beryl Mercer, Frederick Kerr, Jackie Searle. Jack Conway directed, Frederick Lonsdale's script.
Do you know this movie?
I know it from this book, but I haven't seen it. I'd like to see it.
So he does not think think either of the movies that we watched this week are worth remembering.
Well, maybe, but I'm not done yet.
Oh, jeez.
We got 3 more. This is from the quick hits at the end of the chapter. He gives them less than a paragraph, but at least a sentence. Karen Morley, as a particularly vicious shrew, was memorable in a William Haynes drama about broadcasting called Are You Listening? Pirandello's As You Desire Me provided an interesting role for Garbo, platinum-topped and world-weary.
I did not like that when I saw it, but that was in my 20s.
Yeah, I saw it too, and I think it's the only Greta Garbo movie I haven't liked.
Yeah, it wasn't good, was it?
No, but maybe we'll try it again one day and see if we like it any better. And Charles Laughton repeated a stage role in an interesting murder drama, Payment Deferred, with Dorothy Peterson effective as his wife. That gets my attention. I love Dorothy Peterson. I talk about her every chance I get.
Was there more?
Nope, that's it.
Then I repeat my observation.
First up is Blondie of the Follies, and I've got John Douglas Eames from the MGM Story to give his summary and his thoughts, such as they are. Marion Davies and Billy Dove felt at home in Blondie of the Follies. Both Ziegfeld girls in their pre-movie days, they played friendly rivals in this backstage yarn. Robert Montgomery, Jimmy Durante, Zasu Pitts, James Gleason, Sidney Toler, Douglas Dombreel, and Clyde Cook were also cast. With all that talent in a Francis Marion scenario with Anita Loos dialogue and directed by Edmund Goulding, it should have been as good all through as it was in one scene. A wicked takeoff by Davies and Durante of Garbo and John Barrymore in Goulding's Grand Hotel.
Everyone only talks about that scene.
It's true, it is remarkable, but I think there's a lot in the rest of the film to recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, particularly because Edmund Goulding is making fun of his enormous hit from the same year.
That's the kind of guy Eddie Goulding was.
How did this party scene come about? Was Jimmy Durante just...
He was just wandering around the studio.
He was just wandering around the studio, and Edmund Goulding's like, come enliven this party scene. This is what they got up to.
He sure did.
That's what it feels like, anyway.
Yeah, it's got such an amazing spontaneity to it. He does bring out great things in Marion Davies. I would have loved to have seen more collaborations between Durante and Marion Davies.
Well, she does do more impressions in her Vidor comedies.
Yeah.
But in terms of Eames's summary of this movie, Billy Dove and Marion Davies are certainly friends, but they're not very friendly friends.
They're friends the way Jenny in Portrait of Jenny is friends with her best pals. She only talks about how she can fight them good. I mean, we meet them as adults, but you get the sense that they've been friends since they were kids. They do love each other. They support each other most of the time, but they also hit each other a fair bit.
We watched this movie before. We've kind of mentioned it every time we do a Marion Davies movie because it made a big impression on us. It's also Edmund Goulding. Of course, we love that director. Without being an auteur, he tends to make above average to great movies. On a rewatch, this certainly felt more vivid and alive and special, both the movie as a whole and Marion Davies' performance in particular, than the other Davies movies that we've watched for the podcast. That said, there are some pretty big problems with the screenplay.
Yeah, I agree.
And I found a very negative review on precode.com by Danny that I don't agree with, but that also gives the only production details I could find online, which go some way toward explaining those problems. What do you think was causing the problem? At a random guess.
William Randolph Hearst.
At a random guess. At a Randolph guess. Yeah, so he interfered. Here, I'll quote from the post. Based on a script from Francis Marion, Davies worked with Anita Loos to further dramatize life behind the scenes. However, Davies' lover, William Randolph Hearst, heavily interfered in the picture, from ditching any scenes that didn't feature Davies to removing sections of the film that may have made Dove's character look more sympathetic. So there you go, because the first time I watched the film, I was just so engaged by the vividness of the portrayal of these two women's friendship. But on a rewatch, obviously the problem with that is that there is no resolution to the friendship at the end of the movie. Instead of which, I mean, we do, I think, want to see Marion Davies get together with Robert Montgomery. They're pretty charming together in this movie, but only by resolving her relationship with Billy Dove in a favorable way, right? And doesn't happen at all. The last thing we see of Billy Dove, she is still obsessively telling Marion Davies that she has to stay away from Robert Montgomery, even after she's just admitted to trying to kill her friend over this and has disabled her for life as far as we know at that point of the plot. So it's a pretty absurd ending to what's been the major dramatic arc of the story.
It could definitely have used some reshaping.
Seems to have been reshaped in the wrong direction.
I mean, the movie just ends with Robert Montgomery and a bunch of doctors trooping into the tenement apartment and saying, oh yeah, everything can be fixed, don't worry about it. And Billy Dove, who knows where she is? She left town, she's touring in vaudeville or something.
But Hearst didn't seem to mind the fact that Marion Davies' character throws over her millionaire older lover for Robert Montgomery in this movie.
Douglas Dumbrille was still a lot younger than William Randolph Hearst. From Hamilton, Ontario. I don't think I ever knew that about Douglas.
Yeah, like there's only about a 10-year age difference between Marion Davies and Douglas Dumbrille, although I think he's playing older than his age in this movie.
Well, he's a stodgy, weird old man. Pretty much all he says the entire movie is, I like blondes.
Yeah.
He's pretty funny saying it every time.
And then he's kept off stage after that. But let's just pretend fanfic version of this movie. Let's, the kind of readings that you like to give to movies all the time, Dave. Let's just pretend that we're reading between the lines. We're looking at the subtext that might have been text if it weren't for William Randolph Hearst. We're just going to assume that the missing scene at the end of this movie is when they share the news of their engagement with Billy Dove, and she's ecstatic with happiness.
Yeah, fair enough. The movie is so good for the first half and during that party scene that, I'm willing to extend it a lot of goodwill. It's not a 5-star movie because it goes all over the place in the second half. Still great, worth seeing. Incredible performance by Marion Davies.
Yeah, I would say that it probably goes downhill after the peak of that party scene.
Yeah.
I wouldn't actually say for me that it was the peak of the movie, but everything definitely goes downhill after that. Marion Davies' character, who's been just this ball of crazy, spontaneous fun for most of the movie, and naivety, but not just naivety, she grows up pretty quickly too, gets turned into this martyr, and her friend attempts to kill her over a man, and, all the rest of this stupid stuff happens that we didn't like. So we're just going to, if I were writing the fanfic version, we would just change what happens after the party scene, let's say.
I have to wonder, though, whether Paul Verhoeven was referencing this, or Joe Esterhazy, who wrote the script of Showgirls, because that's a big plot point in that film. Elizabeth Berkley nearly killing Gina Gershon.
Yeah, but are they lifelong best friends?
No, that's the only similarity, but I don't know how many other movies there are about showgirls trying to kill each other. Probably more than I think.
Plenty. I'm sure it's a trope. There's also Dance Girl Dance.
Does someone try to kill someone on stage?
Oh, I thought... no, I didn't know you meant literally try to kill. You're just talking about episodes where they are literally trying to kill each other.
Yeah. Isn't that what happens in Showgirls? I'll have to see that again.
It's one of your favorite movies.
Very much in control from beginning to end of a master. This one, William Randolph Hearst, has much to answer for. But yeah, those early scenes in the tenement are just incredible, and that's mostly what I was remembering when I was thinking of the movie, how much I liked it.
Yeah, the Precode.com post mentions the overlapping dialogue and mentions how that's attributed to new Hollywood directors. Well, when I was watching it, I was thinking of how the invention of overlapping dialogue is usually credited to Howard Hawks.
Or Orson Welles.
Well, Hawks around the time of His Girl Friday, certainly.
Yeah, but Orson Welles was very big on that, too.
But here it is in 1932, so innovator Edmund Goulding.
Edmund Goulding cannot be discounted.
Nope.
It should be revered. I mean, the scenes around that apartment are amazing, and everyone is like a crackerjack supporting character / character actor in that family, right? Like James Gleason.
We've been in almost every studio that we've done for this year, we keep seeing Zazu Pitts.
She was very much in demand. And it's sad that probably the story that's most associated with Zazu Pitts these days, I think, is that Universal had to reshoot all of the mother scenes in All Quiet on the Western Front because she was cast as the mother and the audiences kept thinking, okay, something funny is going to happen here. Oh no. Nothing funny's happening. Everyone's just dying and humanity's being destroyed. So they put Beryl Mercer in the movie instead as the mother and reshot all of the scenes.
Well, she just couldn't get a break. She was too funny. Couldn't get a break as a dramatic actress.
Well, she's in Greed. Yeah, so you'd think being the focal point of Greed would be enough to secure your dramatic bona fides for the rest of your life, but apparently not.
Well, I don't know enough about her career to know when she gets started as a comedian.
I mean, she's incredibly funny, so you can see why everyone wanted her to do that. Great older sister, interceding in just the right way with the family. I mean, the parents are loving as well, but as James Gleason is forced to admit, he is a stodgy old crab. Despite his great love for his daughter, he has these outbursts that he strives mightily to control.
He has one major outburst,
Yeah.
which relates to his fear of his darling daughter, his favorite person in the family, losing her sexual innocence.
I mean, there's a real valid reason to be concerned, especially in 1932, but still now, when your daughter goes out, you're worried, what the hell is this horrible world going to do to her? It turns out that she's in the company of Robert Montgomery and nothing bad happens to her.
You're talking about rape, but he is more concerned about her voluntarily having sex. Of course, out-of-wedlock pregnancy is a problem then and now. Or now it's not so much the out-of-wedlock part, it's just the trying to raise a child as a single parent.
Right, but I'm not sure. I think the way he plays it, there's just a lot of pressure and concern there in general about what can happen to you as a woman whenever you go out in public.
Well, he's worried about Robert Montgomery's designs on her, certainly, but I read this primarily as his concern about, I mean, she's been presented aggressively for many, many scenes of this movie as a natural innocent, in contrast to Billy Dove, and we're going to have to talk about that. This is the golden, untarnished quality that he doesn't want his daughter to lose. I feel like, despite the patriarchal implications of that, I feel like the movie has, if you enjoy this movie and enjoy her performance, which Danny definitely did not, but if you do, then I feel like the movie does a good job of making you see why you don't want this young woman to turn into somebody hard and cynical, let alone, an alcoholic and a drug addict and whatever else, somebody's mistress and whatever else is going to happen to her in this possible scenario. But the movie handles all of that in a fascinating way, and I'm going to have to give credit. I'm going to have to say that despite the interference of Hearst, that with Anita Loos and Frances Marion and Edmund Goulding on board, I'm going to have to say that this is deliberate, the way the movie handles these themes about the patriarchal double sexual standard. Namely that Davies' character decides that she's going to be like Billy Dove, in a scene that was giving me Laura Palmer and Donna vibes from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, a little bit, tiny bit.
Sure.
Same general tropes, but yeah, and she gets herself a millionaire. She gets herself set up in an apartment just like Billy Dove. Robert Montgomery admits that, yeah, you've lost your innocence too, and he gets quite bitter and nasty about it, briefly. But nothing about her has actually essentially changed.
No, she's pretty resilient in that way.
So we don't see the expected trajectory of her turning into this hardened and cynical character.
No. I mean, the big transition for her happens when she gets thrown off the stage and breaks her legs. Then, yes, she is sadly changed.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really interesting subversion of expectations.
Yeah, she's pretty much immune to the corrosive effect of Douglas Dumbrille. She's not particularly happy about being his side piece, but yeah, it doesn't seem to be affecting her natural buoyancy in any other way.
Her buoyancy and her spontaneity. So then, if that is not the contrast, Robert Montgomery initially tries to frame the contrast between her and Billy Dove as good girl, bad girl, the kind of girl you respect and the kind of girl that you don't respect. But he's wrong, right? As the plot proves, he's wrong.
Well, yeah, the Madonna whore dichotomy is not a real thing. It is in the minds of men. And Robert Montgomery embodies that. He sees Billy Dove and he's like, okay, this is a woman I can have sex with and I don't have to care about her.
And so,
I can discard her anytime I want.
But then why does he think that? Why are these women who don't have any difference, ultimately, in their approach to sex and becoming independent and getting ahead, why does he think there there's this contrast initially.
Well, I think what the movie shows us is that Marion Davies behaves in a genuine way with everyone.
Right, and he somehow associates that with innocence. I guess there is an innocence to it, but it is apparently not sexual innocence.
No, exactly. And Billy Dove, she is the reverse of Marion Davies in that sense, because in all of her dealings with everyone outside of the tenement world, she is false.
Yeah, and we see that as a contrast that's set up in the very first scene when we see them interact for the first time, where Billy Dove is worried about the way Marion Davies is behaving with these old guys with money standing around by the car who are getting fresh with her.
She smacks them.
She smacks one of the guys and just, laughs about it.
That's exactly what they deserve.
And goes bouncing along on her way. So Billy Dove is always thinking about getting ahead. And Marion Davies even, makes fun of her to others at one point, I think it's in front of Robert Montgomery and Douglas Dumbrille, and says that she has always been this way. Even as a kid, she would suddenly get all hoity-toity.
So yeah, Marion Davies, as much as we love her, she isn't a great friend to Billy Dove in those scenes. Her friend has explicitly asked her not to undermine her with these guys. And
yeah, but she just can't take Billy Dove's nonsense seriously.
Yeah, I know, but then don't come around, right?
But this is the thing, the most interesting thing about their friendship, right, is that it seems to be some kind of opposites attract, it seems to be an attraction.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mean a sexual attraction. I guess you could read that subtext into it if you want to. I'm sure people have. There's a scene where they get into bed together. There's just this kind of electric, volatile attraction between these two women who are so opposite and who find themselves in a situation of being rivals.
They can't keep away from each other, but they also can't help but fight continuously. The movie decides to center all of that around rivalry for a man. I think it would have been better if they had not done that. They're not fighting over a man in that first scene. They don't need a man to fight over. And that's, I think, the kernel that made me really invest in their relationship throughout, because it's not so silly as they're fighting over Robert Montgomery, even though they decide to put it that way once they meet him.
Yeah, so it feels like, and it's probably the fact that two female screenwriters wrote this, and I guess Marion Davies also contributed to the scenario, that interesting kernel of female friendship, it made me think faintly of the My Brilliant Friend series, where they do fight over a man, but they fight more over who's more brilliant
Right.
The whole time. The two women do have this electric attraction to each other and are kind of the only people who can understand each other, and they grow up together, and they grow up in a poor neighborhood together, so they understand that. There's one who is more capable of fitting in, being upwardly mobile, getting ahead than the other, and this is a whole saga, a whole female friendship saga that has recently taken the world of global readers by storm.
All based on Blondie of the Follies.
Yeah, this is where this friendship could go if Hollywood screenplays were interested in that, right? But, generally speaking, they are not.
Sadly not, but it gives us enough of a sense of that kind of friendship in the opening scenes to allow us to maintain focus on that thread if you want to.
Yeah, and to feel like something unusual is being presented.
And I guess that would have only been more discernible, more present in the film on screen if William Randolph Hearst had allowed some Billy Dove scenes. Were they filmed and then cut, or just not filmed? They were in the script? I guess we don't know probably all the details.
Removing sections of the film.
So they were filmed, and he watched them and said, no, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah, that's definitely what it feels like. It feels like scenes have been cut. Things have been taken out that ought to be there. There are these weird gaps. And it's a real shame, because this is just a genius performance from Marion Davies, and Edmund Goulding, could have made another 5-star movie here.
I think it has become de rigueur, an accepted fact, that Marion Davies was in fact an awesome comedian, and anything people might have thought about her due to the way the Marion Davies analog is portrayed in Citizen Kane.
Which Orson Welles himself regretted.
Right. So nobody really thinks that anymore. Everyone knows that Marion Davies was pretty great, but they still mostly focus on her silent comedy work, especially with King Vidor. You don't get a huge amount of talk about these early 30s comedies that she was doing, but it's clear that she was excelling in the sound era as well.
It's one of those forcefully winning performances that either you are going to go with it and just let this charming clowning win you over, or you're going to resist it. In that respect, it reminds me of, Jennifer Jones. Speaking of Jennifer Jones again, gives a lot of performances like that. Dorothy McGuire in Claudia, something like that, I would say. I particularly loved the whole sequence where she meets Robert Montgomery, right? When they first encounter each other. When her friend pisses her off by giving not subtle hints that she needs to get out of there.
Yeah.
And she doesn't understand why. Now, we have to believe that initially, Blondie is so naive that she doesn't put it together that her friend is a kept woman, right? And she just meets Robert Montgomery. She's like, oh, this guy's hanging around. Don't know why, but he's cute. There's a spark here. She starts falling for him right away without even thinking it's conceivable that he has a sexual relationship with her friend. They're not acting much like they have. He's particularly not acting much like they have in a relationship, so.
Yeah, it's just two guys in her apartment. Like, it's not even apparent that they're there for a while. They're playing, backgammon? And the two women are off doing their own thing. It's such a huge apartment. You could have several scenes happening between people without any of them being aware of each other. And she thinks that her friend, Lottie/Lorleen, is affording all of this on a Follies salary, maybe?
And then she takes off in a huff. Robert Montgomery comes running after her, and they just have this whole hilarious sequence. They're mostly just interchanging gestures, and Marion Davies is kind of insulting him and rejecting him, but in a way that's so playful that it becomes a game between the two of them. But a game where she's serious. And this is what is charming about her character. And what is so special about Marion Davies' performance is that even when she's being emotionally serious, the character is always playful.
Yeah, that's the hallmark of her persona.
And everything that she's doing as an actress, obviously, feels very spontaneous and improvised. It has that unusual authenticity that her character is supposed to have, and not everybody can give a performance like this, and it is obviously being designed by Goulding to highlight her unique qualities as a performer.
There's nobody else like Marion Davies in the first half of 20th century films, I don't think. She's kind of indispensable, and you can't read her out of film history just because she's siloed off a little bit by this weird fact of William Randolph Hearst bankrolling her movies at MGM and then at Warner Brothers later.
Yeah, he did more harm to her even than David Selznick did to Jennifer Jones, because at least Jennifer Jones...
Selznick is also a great producer. I mean, a guy that really understands films. William Randolph Hearst is just some old guy that has some newspapers.
That's true, although despite Selznick's understanding of films, he did completely fuck up some of her movies, like Gone to Earth.
Yeah, sure, no doubt.
Luckily, the director's cut of that exists, but Selznick did interfere and create an inferior version for Hollywood release.
He did, and his instincts were not always correct, but he had instincts. I don't know what William Randolph Hearst had, but there's no way he ever improved any film with his suggestions. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but I would doubt it.
The whole sequence where she and Robert Montgomery are having their playful flirtation by the elevators, and then this leads to him inviting her to the Follies the next day.
And she's like, oh, well, really? Maybe I should take a whack at the Follies. Everything just seems like she's deciding on the spur of the moment. When she went to visit Lottie's apartment, she had no intention of changing her life completely this way.
Lottie just ends up taking her along just to see the apartment, because this is her...
Well, she wants to show off.
Yeah, but it's more than that.
She also wants to reconnect.
This is her best friend. They seem like they're each other's only friends.
Yeah, we don't meet any other friends other than the family members.
So she needs Marion Davies with her. She's very likely quite lonely. Robert Montgomery isn't giving her much.
Yeah, I didn't mean to be completely negative and judgmental by saying that she's showing off, but she is showing off. But yes, she loves her friend as well, and it's just the nature of their friendship that she's gonna play up how successful she's been while begging her to come back into her life in some way. Their parting scene at the tenement is one of the great things in this movie, too, after they've had their knockdown, drag-out fight.
Right.
And then, Lottie makes the final decision. She is leaving with these guys. She is joining the Follies. Marion Davies tries to talk her out of it a little bit, but when she realizes that, there's no way Billy Dove is going ahead with this plan, then she's like, you're gonna be successful. It's gonna be great. And then they keep talking about how they're gonna write to each other. It's very emotional.
I feel like her primary motivation in taking Marion Davies with her, maybe even she isn't aware of it at the time, but I think she would like her to live with her. I think she is quite lonely. Join the Follies with her, if it only weren't for the fact that Robert Montgomery decides to get stuck on her. But yeah, I think the next really remarkable sequence after the initial flirtation with Robert Montgomery, where she keeps calling him Mr. That's overdone by the end of the movie, but initially it's quite funny and charming. That culminates in Robert Montgomery taking her home and being confronted by her dad. Now, we've already seen a scene of Blondie caring for her father.
He's got heart trouble.
Yeah.
That's a bad sign.
Pathos dad, telling him not to walk so much. He's lost his position, which she didn't know about before.
And James Gleason is really gripping in this role, too. He's always good, but usually Hollywood cast him as a funny little tough guy.
In this, he is definitely a funny little soft guy.
Yes.
But yeah, so this leads into the next pretty remarkable sequence, which is the father and Blondie standing up to each other. He threatens to thrash her because he doesn't know what else to do to try to control his daughter's frightening sexuality and what that sexuality might lead her into.
That doesn't work.
No, that doesn't work at all. She just runs out of there and decides to live with Billy Dove. But then also, because this establishing scene has already happened between them, I think we find it quite heartbreaking that they're going to fight this way. And then we get this whole extended sequence of pathos where everyone in the family is telling Dad that he has fucked up.
Yeah.
And that he just needs to chill, stop being so old-fashioned, and get with the times and realize that nowadays daughters sleep around. Even your precious, darling Blondie is going to slut it up. That's just the way the times are. You may have thought that she was going to marry some fine young man and have a bunch of kids, but, a beautiful young woman can get a very nice apartment if she just decides to sleep with an ancient millionaire.
Sidney Toller, playing Zazu Pitts' husband at that family breakfast scene. At one point he says, I wish I was a dame.
Yes.
She's all set in Midtown Manhattan, and look where we are.
And of course, insofar as we have responded to Marion Davies' character, I pulled in a lot of directions. This is a good dramatic moment in the movie because I'm pulled in a lot of directions. I want her relationship with Robert Montgomery to continue because they are lovely together, as much of a jerk as he's being to Billy Dove. I want her to be independent. I want her to get out of that little tenement apartment where nobody wants to be. But I also understand the father's fear. Ultimately, it is a fear that her personality is going to change.
Right.
Ultimately, it's a fear that this lovely, bubbly, buoyant innocence is, like I said, going to turn into something cynical and grasping and hardened and bitter.
Or suicidal and melancholic.
Sure.
Which we see sometimes in kept woman melodramas. This movie's not going to go in that direction, but in James Gleason's mind, he can possibly be thinking that's where she's headed.
But he doesn't want to alienate his daughter, so he comes to her apartment. What does he just keep saying? Well, I think it's fine, or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. He does say it's fine several times, and he says, take care of my daughter, to her. It's very gripping.
And you just see this...
It's a really strong emotional scene between them.
You see this frail, we already know he's sick, frail, aging, working class guy who can't keep up this patriarchal front of harshness, who can't stick by putting a muzzle on his daughter's sexuality because, he just feels too tenderly toward her to have these harsh feelings continue between them, right?
Yeah, and he also understands that the sexuality she's expressing is part of the natural exuberance that everyone loves about her. He's just worried that it's going to be warped by an encounter with the world. He's not worried that there's something in her inherently that he thinks is bad. He just thinks that she's going to get taken advantage of and hurt.
Well, they have this ambiguous exchange, right? Where he says, I know you could never do anything very, very bad.
Right.
And she says, yes, of course, you know that. But she does turn around and become someone's mistress. So the question is...
Well, that's not very bad.
Yeah, but this is what they are actually discussing between them. So the question is doing something very, very bad about the act or about the attitude? And I think what they're saying between them, and what he's tried to come to peace with himself about, is the idea that this person, his daughter, no matter what she did, it could never be very, very bad because the evil intention would not be there.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still frightening for him to think of her doing these acts that he thinks of as very, very bad.
He's having a tough time, but thankfully he gets that parting scene with her because he dies pretty shortly thereafter, and that scene is wrenching as well. She is summoned to his office because he'd gotten a new job. He's lying there. He had fallen off of his desk. And everyone's talking about how, oh, it's not such a bad bump on the head. But of course the problem is not the bump on the head. It's that he's had a heart attack and he's dead. She has to find all of that out in just a couple of minutes. And something does change for her after his death.
There's also the scene on the boat.
Yeah, well, another fight breaks out. They throw each other into the Hudson River or whatever that body of water is.
And this is where, because she knows that she can't be with Robert Montgomery, because she refuses to betray her friend once she's found out the nature of their relationship.
Well, this is where she finally decides, all right, well, Douglas Dumbrille, the yacht owner, I guess I'll...
Well, this is because anger is still flaring up between her and Billy Dove, right? Yeah. Well, this was the kind of Laura and Donna scene, except it's framed in terms of their rivalry again. They're just bickering. Marion Davies just says, okay, fine, then if I can't have Robert Montgomery, I'm going to beat you at your own game. I will live this lifestyle harder than you do, and I will be more successful at it than you are.
Yeah, and she is, because she absolutely does it in her own way, even though she's doing something inauthentic in a sense, because she's going to play up to Douglas Dumbrille, and she'd only be interested in him for his yacht and his money. She does not start putting on Lurleen airs.
She's got her little gammon sailor suit on.
Yeah, exactly. She reports to the seduction area in the most ill-suited attire possible, and she's just like, okay, you like blondes? If you want to take me as a complete weirdo in a sailor suit, have at it. It's genius. In a way, it is saying, I'm going to maintain my integrity while playing this weird game with these old guys that you've been doing.
And it's very curious.
It is.
I don't know, is this supposed to be a commentary on Marion Davies herself? I can't think why else this plot is in place.
Well, it's the plot of any movie or any story about women that get involved in something like the Follies.
Yeah, but I mean specifically this strange plot that I originally outlined, which subverts the expectation that becoming sexually experienced is going to ruin this character, is going to fundamentally change this character.
Well, yeah, I mean, it must have something biographical about it. I mean, the fact that Marion Davies has been the mistress of the arch old guy in America at that time, it had not dimmed her ebullience on film.
Yeah, she's still going to be this...
She's certainly not a kept woman. I mean, she kept working.
She's still going to be this charming weirdo, as you said.
Definitely a movie that people should see. Don't expect perfect screenplay symmetry and development, but do expect several indelible performances.
A fragment of a great screenplay, and some great direction from Edmund Goulding.
And some amazing on-the-fly work from Jimmy Durante as well. Next, let's hear what Eames thinks about Faithless. Tallulah Bankhead was lent to MGM by Paramount for Faithless. Her flamboyant personality and uninhibited performances on and off the stage had kept Londoners on a vicarious spree for 8 years, until Paramount brought her back to the States in 1931. They starred her in 5 films, and she returned to the stage after this MGM job. The camera unaccountably dimmed her luster and her crowd magnetism. Robert Montgomery partnered Tallulah in this drama of the rich, impoverished by the Wall Street crash, scripted by Carrie Wilson from a Mildred Cram novel. Harry Beaumont directed, with Hugh Herbert and Louise Closser-Hale featured.
I thought this movie was psychotic.
This movie was really amazing. I loved
it. I thought it was dreadful. Dreadful.
Great.
But it was crazy.
For a while, I was thinking, this is going nowhere. I don't understand what they're doing. But
I understood what they were doing from her opening ironic speech about closing the home for wayward girls. I knew exactly where the plot was going to go. You didn't know?
I didn't know it was going to be this intensely dramatic. Because it starts out as a rom-com.
Well, if she's going to become a sex worker by the end of the movie, it's going to have to get pretty dramatic.
I didn't know that.
Well, I did.
Sometimes it's better not to know. I just experienced it blow by blow as the crash and the depression rained horrors upon our couple.
This movie was so insane without being good. My emotions as I was watching it, it went from absurd through absurd to horror, and then back through horror back to absurd, then maybe again through absurd to horror, and then back to absurd. At times, I was reminded of the crazed, relentless despair of something like The Life of Oharu.
Yeah, it touches on that level of bleakness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is also a movie, a far greater movie, but also a movie that goes back and forth, absurdity and horror kind of chasing each other in circles.
So we've got Tallulah Bankhead playing a young society heiress. She lives in a huge mansion attended by multitudes of servants. She is at the center of Manhattan high living, and the lawyers that she's got on retainer keep telling her your spending is out of control. There's such a thing as a crash which has occurred. You've got to rein in your excesses, and she'll have none of it. This is how she's been raised, and this is how she's going to continue to live. She is in love with a man who has ascended to a pretty important position in his own right, but he's got no family fortune of any kind. And you've got this, I mean, the movie starts out as a conflict that we've seen in many comedies, where the man feels unmanned by the wealth of the woman that he's fallen in love with.
Right, except that Robert Montgomery actually does have a pretty didactic speech about how the kind of money he's making, particularly during the Depression, is outrageously more than your average American man's income.
Yeah, of course. He's in charge of an advertising department. He's a big deal executive. And the fact that even the salary he's pulling down just seems ridiculous to her. It's funny and maddening. But on the other hand, yeah, I mean, why should she give up everything that she has just because he doesn't like it?
Well, why she should give it up is because this is a morality tale about the Depression. That's why.
And she definitely does have a lot to learn in that regard, because as you say, she starts right out with, yeah, all these women I've been supporting with my charities, they're a bunch of bums. They wind up in the gutter because they belong there. I mean, she goes through a transformation worthy of Scrooge in this. It's like she's visited by...
Well, a lot worse things happen to her, though, than happen to Scrooge.
No, Scrooge mostly watches terrible things happen to others. She has to suffer them herself.
Yeah, another movie it reminded me of for its combination of kind of trashiness and moralizing with demented levels of darkness wrapped in a trashy plot line wrapped in ostensible moralization was Susan Lennox, Her Fall and Rise, which we quite liked.
Oh, I love that movie.
I liked it a lot better than I liked Faithless. But I would say they were equally demented. I just feel like Susan Lennox, Her Fall and Rise was more artfully demented.
I found this movie really came together. You know, I mean, it really packed a punch by the end. I was sold 100%.
No, not me. No, the writing was too bad. But I actually, to give you an impression of the impact of the movie on me, I actually had a nightmare about Hugh Herbert.
We've seen Hugh Herbert a couple of times very recently in the Hollywood Studios series. I don't think I'd ever seen him in a movie other than his woo-woo Warner Brothers films.
Yeah, in these MGM films, well, not just MGM, but didn't we see him in
an RKO movie too, Traveling Husbands?
Well, that was RKO? Yeah, he was also playing a sleaze there, a very different kind of sleaze. He's very effective.
Yeah, I did not know he had this in him.
In both of these movies, he's not playing things that... Well, no, he's playing things pretty differently in this movie.
Yeah, this is brutal.
His character is awful. And the fact that you can understand why he thinks he's not so bad and that the deal he's offering Tallulah Bankhead is not so bad just makes him all the worse.
Yeah, well, it just sheds a lot of light on the culture.
So what happens? Carol finds out that she's lost all her money.
And this is 1932, the worst year of the Depression, so this would have been deeply felt by audiences at the time, many of whom had also lost their jobs that year, I'm sure.
I do not think this was a hit, but I mean, this is what MGM's going for, I guess. So yeah, she finds out that she's lost all of her money at the same time that Robert Montgomery finds out that his firm has gone under. She can't reconcile herself to living on no money.
She was already a little bit upset about going to live with him at $20,000 a year, and then he's like, well, maybe $60, $70 a week I can get.
That's a no. She obviously just realizes her own shortcomings, and she's staving off the inevitable by going to live on her friends. She knows that this is not going to last forever, but she just can't face the $60 a week.
No, she does some jet set couch surfing until the couch is pulled out from under her.
And everyone considers her
a pariah.
Finally, Hugh Herbert's wife kicks her out of the, I guess, hotel.
Yeah, I think she's in Miami or something, or Palm Beach.
The hotel where she's been living, and specifically says, I was lending you money and letting you stay here for free, I guess, because of for your social clout, but now I've discovered everybody hates you. You have no social clout because you've been mooching off of them for a year or whatever.
Yeah, social capital can be eroded at a certain point. And Tallulah finds out where that point is.
Hugh Herbert at first seems like he's going to be a creep. That's what she assumes when he accosts her as she's leaving. Then it seems like he's going to be cool when he lends her money, apparently with no strings attached. But the very next scene, we find out that there were lots of strings attached.
He was not cool.
He was not cool at all.
And Robert Montgomery's been going through all kinds of hell. This idea that he's going to get a $60 or $70 job a week, even that was beyond the Depression's power to bestow upon him, and we find him bumming around. He's just a panhandler at a certain point.
Also, this younger brother.
Oh man, I love this movie. This younger brother is such an asshole. And in almost any other movie, he would be some kind of beacon of innocence. But the movie is saying this is the worst person.
Yeah, he's giving this really flowery speech about how morally suspect Tallulah Bankhead is, how she's just born to be a whore. She's going to end up on the streets. She's just made of tinsel.
The first scene in which he meets her...
They have some nice banter.
They do, but in any other movie, this guy would somehow... He would have some kind of positive role in the film. And here, you just want to punch him.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the movie's whole point is to make the case that...
This could happen to anyone.
That what happens to Tallulah Bankhead could happen to anyone. It makes the case to her, but it doesn't present that as her punishment. It's just that she finds out what it would mean for a woman to be in a situation where she has no money. She has no recourse, right? The fact that that movie has its heart in the right place that way just doesn't make it a good movie.
I just find it really incredibly effective in etching these human situations in the mind. I really liked Tallulah Bankhead in this movie. I wasn't sure if I was going to, because everyone loves her in Lifeboat, which was her big comeback, and I've heard her on The Big Show, radio, where she's great. But this period here, which even Eames talks about, no one has a lot to say about her early 30s Paramount ventures.
Well, no one has a lot to say about any of her film work. Do you know how Tallulah Bankhead's career got started? I was reading a little more about her this time. She was flamboyantly sexual, flamboyantly bisexual, heavy drinker, heavy smoker, drug user, cocaine. When she was 15, and I mean, yes, she was just a larger-than-life personality who became as famous for her offstage personality as for her successful performances.
But she certainly was a huge magnitude star on the stage.
Yeah, but when I was reading about her career, she was in a lot of failures, and it took a long time for her to become a really big bankheadable star. She had some very, very celebrated performances, but not everything she did was celebrated. She got started when she was 15. Oh, by the way, there is something that she and Marion Davies have in common, which is they both spent time at the same convent school in New York. They're not the same age, so presumably not at the same time. But yeah, when she was 15, she submitted her photo to Picture Play and won a contest. They gave her a trip to New York, and she got a part in a movie, which did not lead to an exciting film career. However, she moved into the Algonquin Hotel, still 15, presumably, and charmed her way into the Algonquin Round Table.
Wow.
And then went on the stage. I don't know, I just absolutely love this idea of this crazy, independent, bisexual teenager who just moves into the Algonquin Hotel, makes friends with the Algonquin Round Table, presumably starts having affairs, starts her long and famous theater career.
And everyone always says that her magnetism did not transfer into these films, but I found her incredibly charming, and I really liked her rapport with Robert Montgomery, who's an expert at establishing rapport with everyone at MGM. That's why they kept him around, and we saw that dramatically proved, I thought, in these two films.
I mean, yeah, the fact that he's so easily likable, and the fact that he can actually do that scene with Marion Davies in Blondie of the Follies and really contribute to it, like improvise with her in a way that's fun, while still letting the leading lady be the star. I mean, that's kind of his signature at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what MGM needed him for. They didn't have anyone else quite like this, and he slides into so many good movies during this period. Now, he starts to get much showier roles where he's the focus toward the end of the decade, because I guess presumably he was pushing for it and the studio thought he could handle it, like Night Must Fall, where he's a serial killer. Pretty amazing, and we know what happened in the 40s because we've talked about a lot of his movies with Joan Harrison, where he was directing and starring in some of them. Just an amazing career.
But we were talking about Hugh Herbert and how he turns out to not be cool.
He's about as far from being cool as it can get. Brutalizing Tallulah Bankhead.
Well, yeah, he just grabs her and pulls her into the bedroom to rape her.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Robert Montgomery comes along. Well, that just, once he figures out what's going on, that just causes Tallulah to lose her shit. Toward the end of this scene, that's my favorite moment of Hugh Herbert, where he's like completely disheveled and they're both really drunk. I think it's when she's already walked out on him and he's talking to himself about how well he's done by her. Bought her clothes and he bought her jewels and he's taken good care of her, and, why can't she just reward him with sex?
Yeah, and he's speaking in the voice of the patriarchal society of the time. He absolutely does not believe he is the villain of the piece. And of course, nobody does. It's not always borne out by films that we watch. Sometimes people seem to know that they're playing a villain, and I don't think that ever works. It's never as interesting as someone who does villainous things while protesting that they're the one that's being hard done by. And that's what you get from Hugh Herbert. I don't think this is a bad script at all.
It's heavy-handed and didactic. You can't deny that.
Yeah, but only
in a way that actually, like I said, made me think of Life of O'Hara.
Yeah, it makes me think of Dickens. But I love Dickens.
Well, Dickens is funny.
Well, this had some funny things in it, too.
Okay. Like what?
Well, I thought all the initial scenes were pretty funny when things are going fairly well for our two leads, but they're at an impasse about who's gonna give up what part of their lives.
Well, you heard it here first. Faithless is Dickens. The ending...
I found it really emotionally charged.
Covering the same territory as Hen in the Wind. Ozu's Hen in the Wind is obviously, clearly a much better movie than this is. It's like a masterpiece, while still being extraordinarily dark. I will say one thing about this movie. I think the writing is bad in some sense. It is not, in the sense that I said, it's not subtle. It is didactic, and it's not clever, and it's not elegant. But if a movie gives me a nightmare, I have to admit that it's probably got something going for it.
It definitely has that going for it. It shows us some unbelievable cruelty, both unconscious and conscious, on the part of several people. It also shows us some amazing examples of human feeling for other human beings, coming from unexpected quarters as well, right? Like that scene with the policeman, it really got me. He's picked her up on solicitation, walking her down the street to the jail.
The kindly, fatherly Irish cop?
Yes, it's all blunt force aimed at the tear ducts, but it really worked on me. And he's like, we have to find some other way for you to get some money. I understand why you're doing this. You have to promise me you're not going to do it. And she doesn't want to because she's got to get money to take care of Robert Montgomery, who's nearly been killed by the Union.
Oh my god, that was a great scene. What an odd scene for MGM. It's actually depicting...
Well, the Union is the...
Yeah, they're the bad guys, but at the same time, somehow the way Robert Montgomery plays that scene, you really believe he sees their point.
Yeah.
Like, it's the depression, and they're doing what they have to do, just like Tallulah Bankhead's doing what she has to do. Everybody is doing what they've got to do, even if they're going to kill themselves or others.
Yeah, Robert Montgomery was the head of an advertising department at a major firm in Manhattan, and at this point in the film, he's a scab at a warehouse.
It's horrifying. Like, what's worse, having to be in his position or being these guys who really have no choice but to use violence against him? Like, it's just another horrifying situation portrayed in this movie.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I guess do what you have to do, guys. I'm going to do what I have to do. We'll just see what happens. And then they're like, are you sure you're going through with this, buddy? Like, they give him several chances. It's true, they're not portrayed as gleefully villainous. But yeah, I don't think it would have been filmed this way in a Warner Brothers movie. But yeah.
But the way it's filmed is almost better because, I mean, this feels like one point where the movie is not being didactic. It really is just everybody is up against it.
Yeah, it's a horrible situation.
Doing things that they do not want to do, put at odds with each other.
Yeah, and they basically skewer his spleen somehow, and no exact diagnosis for what's happening, but he's got blood coming out of his mouth from a stomach injury. There's clearly massive internal hemorrhaging happening, and he's trying to act as if, yeah, I got my $5. Everything's great.
But yeah, I mean, what are we talking about with Hen in the Wind? We're talking about the melodramatic situation of a woman being forced into prostitution in order to care for her family and then having to face telling her husband about this and not knowing. Like, earlier, actually, so he found out that she was being kept by Hugh Herbert. Robert Montgomery did. And then later on, they meet up after he thinks he's found work. And he promises to forget that ever happened, but does say that he will kill her if she ever does anything like that again. This is where we got the ironic title of the movie. And so her expectation when she tells him about this is that at the very least, he will never want to see her again, and in worst case scenario, he will kill her.
Yeah, but she does it anyway.
It was great because right at the very moment, now this actually was kind of masterful of the screenplay, that it gives me just enough time to pause at that point in the story to think to myself for the first time, where is this brother? When is this brother showing up again? Why couldn't this brother help them out?
He's a metallurgist. He's done fine. He was put through college by Robert Montgomery. Like, he does say, I've been looking everywhere for you. I can't find you. He could have given them all kinds of money, but he's too out to lunch with his medals.
But yeah, right at that moment I'm thinking, when is this brother coming back? He does show up, but he doesn't help anybody. Instead, he acts in a completely obnoxious way.
Remarkable. Nightmare scenario. She is on the street propositioning men, and turns out she's given the game away to the brother. So now, even if she wanted to tell him, hey, Robert Montgomery needs some money from metallurgist brother, she can. I mean, I guess that would have been the final twist of the knife if she had to go to the brother for money, knowing that he was going to also tell Robert Montgomery about her being a prostitute.
And then Robert Montgomery, in his final lines for the movie, tries to sell the idea that Tallulah Bankhead prostituting herself for his sake is no different than her being the ideal homemaker who cooks his food and washes his clothes. It's a really weird final speech.
It is, but it's very heartfelt. Everything worked on me for this movie. I was skeptical a little bit at the beginning, but as it chugged along, it just gathered momentum until I just loved it by the end. I was really impressed.
Well, for me, there was something about it that I really hated. Even though I agree with you about the interest that it has, it does feel of a piece with, like I said, other pre-code movies MGM was making with their female stars like Susan Lennox. Very similar, this tone of, which I don't think I've seen in any other pre-codes from other studios, this tone of just relentless sexual horror, ultimately for the purpose of undermining the patriarchal attitudes being portrayed. Now, we did see a movie with much the same purpose behind it. The Easiest Way, that Constance Bennett vehicle, wasn't so relentlessly despairing, but then it also wasn't trying to deal with the depression. The Easiest Way.
Right, not in the same way. It was more restrained.
Yeah, that movie was a lot more artful. Now, Faithless and Susan Lennox are not artful, but they are all the more drenched in horror just by the fact that they are not trying to exercise that kind of restraint.
Yeah, I've got room in my heart for both The Easiest Way and a film like Faithless. I'm pretty impressed by both of them. When we're thinking about MGM, not that people are likely to forget, but just in case, the early 30s, we're in the realm of Thalberg here. This is the Thalberg MGM. Once he dies, MGM really starts to take on more of the Louis B. Mayer cast, and you're less likely to see strident defenses or strident attacks on patriarchy under Mayer, although certainly we've seen that MGM made some great movies. It's not like Mayer. I just don't think Mayer would have made a movie like this. Of course, it's not the pre-code era anyway, so he couldn't have. But they did move into different territory for the most part.
Yeah, but also, it's not just Mayer and the end of the pre-code era changing things. You'll remember that a lot of these fallen woman melodramas, soapy women's pictures, were being constructed for their female stars in the early 30s, but screwball comedy came around, and this was something that Depression audiences actually wanted to see, and just changed everything. It made this kind of drama look more ludicrous even than it did to me watching it now in 2025.
Well, nobody loves screwball comedies more than I do, but I'm a big fan of these weepers from the early 30s. Happy that they exist. What about those scenes with Tallulah and the landlady? Amazing.
Yeah, sure. The landlady is helping her out. They have some kind of solidarity. This poor landlady has some kind of solidarity with her, unlike her earlier landladies.
Oh, it's just incredibly poignant when she's like, well, you should put on some lipstick if you're going to go out and try to solicit.
These are the scenic touches that Dave loves.
I've never seen anything quite like that in a movie.
So heavy-handed.
The hands gripped my heart.
I'm glad that it worked on you as intended.
All right, Fear and Moviegoing in Toronto.
Well, here's a movie that cannot survive irony.
Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Had you seen this movie before?
No. All I knew about it was that it was one of Nicolas Cage's more mainstream movies.
Well, he won the Oscar, yes.
I had no idea what this was going to be. No idea. This isn't the kind of thing you usually like. This kind of really dark, explicitly sexual movie. Of course, you could describe most of David Lynch's movies that way, and you do like those, so it's variable.
I like Mike Figgis. He's a good director.
What is it about this movie that draws you in, Dave, that makes its relentless horror and darkness, up to and including, speaking of nightmare fuel, I'm not going to quickly or possibly ever forget, spoilers, the ending in which Elisabeth Shue has sex with a literally dying man.
It's intense, for sure. Nicolas Cage gives a bravura performance.
Oh, yeah, this movie reminded me, because I tried watching a couple of his recent movies in the last couple of years, and this movie reminded me that, yes, Nicolas Cage actually was a great actor at one point.
He was. But actually, the thing that I love the most about this movie is Elisabeth Shue. It's one of the great performances in cinema.
It is great. I think they're probably equally great, but the fascinating thing about the screenplay is the gender reversal, obviously. Like, where he is her project, he's her obsession, he's completely passive before her. It might as well be a weird, fucked up reverse Vertigo almost.
And it's all from her perspective, because a lot of these little...
Well, he's not even a human being at the point at which she meets him.
No, exactly, and he's explicitly stated this is how he wants to be. He forecloses any attempt to try to understand why he's like that. He's like, we're not going to talk about that. I'm going to drink until I'm dead, and it doesn't matter why. I don't even know why. he tells himself at a certain point. But this is what I'm doing.
And that's another thing that we normally don't like in movies, where characters are acting in self-destructive ways and there's no attempt at all to psychologize it. So why do you think it works in this movie? We also don't know how Elisabeth Shue got into the position that she's in.
I think we can intuit that. And the reason I love the movie is because it's not about him. It's about her. It's about how he impacts her life and what he makes her think about and the things that happen to her because of it. Such a fascinating character that she's playing. She is trying very hard to convince herself that she's living her best life as a sex worker. We can see quite clearly that even though, yeah, she likes the idea, the power of giving this performance and being exactly what the client wants, there's something that she actually does take pleasure in about that. But she's got this pimp, Julian Sands, who's not good to her and cuts her with a knife when he's not happy.
If we're to believe movies, usually pimps are not good to their prostitutes. Is she with him, like she's letting him cut her at times, and she talks about him as someone who's important to her, although obviously she's already emotionally done with him enough that she instantly falls in love with Nicolas Cage when she meets him. Is she with Julian Sands, because she is so desperately lonely, which she constantly talks about?
Yeah.
But it really is a reverse Vertigo in that, okay, what is Madeline? But with no Judy. What is Madeline? Madeline is the death drive. She is this woman who is driven to commit suicide for supernatural reasons, for reasons that are beyond rationality, right? And this holds an incredible fascination for Jimmy Stewart's character. But what is it, do you think, that makes Cage's character this object of fascination for Elisabeth Shue?
Well, that's hard to say, but the complete honesty of his behavior with her and his discourse with her clearly is something that she relishes. It's something that she hasn't really encountered before. She tells us explicitly that she's not performing, she's not acting with him, which is something that she's not familiar with. All she does all day long is be something for other people, and she's not doing that with him.
Is it his absolute passivity is what I kept wondering.
It's obviously part of it. I mean, she feels in control of not whether he's going to drink or not, because he's not passive in that regard. He is a booze-seeking missile, and he manages to get whatever he needs, and he needs a lot.
Yeah, but she feels a parallel between them, in which he also can't judge her for what she is doing.
Right.
It feels like there is a double standard, because she shouldn't be judged for what she is doing because it's beyond her control. But of course, as soon as I think of that, then I'm like, well, what Nicolas Cage is doing is also completely beyond his control, and would make...
No one would do what he's doing if they could choose not to.
And has made him a complete pariah, the way she has also been made into a pariah. So she really sees an equivalence between them, right, that makes her feel, well, not judged by him, obviously.
And he's just a really likable guy. Right? I mean, in the 90s, Cage did all kinds of different things, but one aspect of the persona he was cultivating was as the new Jimmy Stewart.
Well, he's kind of like a fun, spontaneous, eccentric, wacky Marion Davies, except through a haze of constantly being blackout drunk.
Yeah, but he's also very emotionally in tune with other people, which is, incredible feat considering how drunk he is all the time. Like that scene where he's being let go from his job. I don't know if I've seen a sadder or more unexpectedly funny at the same time dismissal scene, right? Like the boss clearly loves him and has been keeping him around forever, even though he's just drunk in his office all the time. His office looks insane. There's just these giant ledgers everywhere, and one of his colleagues walks in and she's like, okay, the boss wants to see you, and he's like, oh, but I gotta go out and make all kinds of money for the firm. Nobody calls him on it. Nobody hates him. Nobody wants him out of there. But ultimately he's a liability and they have to give him a huge envelope full of cash to go away, and Nicolas Cage is like, I'm sorry.
Well, let's say that's what's so remarkable about his performance is that he, even while convincingly being completely fucking out of it all of the time, he manages to convey vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
This is a great quality that Nicolas Cage had in his prime.
And he doesn't like to disappoint people, but he knows he can do nothing else.
But at the same time, I frequently feel her frustration that she's in love with this man that is on planet alcohol most of the time, and she can't even get through to him at all. Or seemingly, because sometimes it seems like he's performing that. Sometimes it seems like he's performing that despite the fact of how out of it he is. Like, when he cheats on her, do you not think that this is because through his haze he is able to perceive that, she's talking to him about eating, which he has stopped doing. She's talking to him about seeing a doctor.
Oh, that scene where she demands that he sees a doctor, so powerful.
Yeah. And he seems to be just completely zombified and out of it. But it's after that he cheats on her, and so it seems like this is canny on his part, and he is trying to get her to throw him out because he's going to die, and he knows she can't stand to watch him die after all.
Yeah, I think it does seem, even though, he seems pretty out of it in the moment, but it does seem very purposeful on his part. I mean, we know he can't have sex. He's told her and us several times that that's not possible anymore due to the alcohol abuse. The amount, obviously he's not really chugging alcohol in all those scenes, I hope, but watching it really hurt me.
Yeah.
Drinking a whole bottle of gin or whatever he's doing. Like,
it's horrible.
It's like watching someone commit seppuku. I mean, like disemboweling themselves.
It's like watching someone commit suicide for the entire length of this movie. It was really horrifying. Yeah, for all of that, it is a romantic drama, and there are swooningly romantic classic songs playing throughout the entire movie.
Mostly performed by Sting.
I didn't know that. It is a romantic drama from the woman's perspective.
Yeah, I love it. She should have won the Oscar. I wouldn't mind if they both won, but if only one of them had to win, I think it should have been her. Incredible performance, and I don't think she ever got another chance to do anything quite like this, sadly.
No, sadly, it seems like not.
Next time on the podcast, we return to Gloria Graham. Part 7. We'll be discussing The Bad and the Beautiful, for which she won the Best Supporting Actress Oscar, and The Glass Wall, which I haven't seen.